before we go in. This is a set of books that isn't actually in the resource room, but you ought to be aware of. These are the main registers. And what the main register is, it's a list of everything you need to know about Maine for any given year. And they give general information on the state, and then by county and by town. They give some background information. There are a lot of business listings, so if somebody you're looking for ran any kind of a business, you may find a listing in here. Or if you're trying to provide some context, as you're writing up the story of who your people were, and you want to find out, who was the governor, who were the state representatives for, Lewiston, Robin, or wherever on any given year. Who were the leaders of the churches at that time. The registers will give you that information.
Back through what year? What year is it?
Back to 1820. Yeah, if you don't find them here, you can find them at the Maine Historical Society as well.
That's when
Maine became a state. Yeah.
And there were also some at the Androscoggin Historical Society.
Quite a collection.
Yeah, it's one of those things, but once you get started, it's like, and I'll probably say this 5 times today, if you get started down one line, it doesn't stop. You find all kinds of other neat things, but this is a good resource particularly for contextual information. But if you're looking for somebody who may have been running a business, you might be able to find something. You might be able to trace, what years that it appeared in the directory to get an idea of when they were in operation.
Yeah, it's like the yellow pages in a way, because they're classified according to
types of business.
Types of businesses and so on.
So you want to trace your
I have to an extent, I'm sure, just like a lot of people have, yes.
Do you have to get permission to come in here, or is it open?
No, it's staffed by volunteers.
But it does have certain hours. It's not open all the time.
We have a question on hours of operation and when you can access this information.
Yeah, when we get
just to let you know that that's already been brought up.
Yeah, I heard.
You have a shoelace undone.
Yes, I do.
Just don't kill yourself.
Right.
Really interrupt the flow. I always look for big eater.
Yeah. We know all kinds of
I could be on this side. I could be over here, huh? Sure.
Okay, so research, when you plan your research, if you're starting a new line or if you're just getting started, period, the first place you probably want to check is to see if somebody else has already done the basic genealogy. Okay, you don't want to have to do work that you don't necessarily need to. And it doesn't mean that you don't want to check whatever you find. But if somebody's already done a history on your family, then it would be very useful. You may need to do the most recent generations because a lot of family histories were written years ago. But once of course, you always start with yourself and work back, or your target individual, and work backwards from there, one step at a time. And so I know with my family, there hadn't been anything written on them. Or at least not the most recent branches. But for one of my lines, it's an old English family that stuff has been written on, and I haven't pursued that, yet. But when I get there, I'll have so much work to do in recent generations on my own, and then the book will guide me from there. Okay, so the family histories in this room are in this case right here. And there is an index over here on the desk. It's in the Rolodex file. So if you're coming up and you're looking to see if there's a history that we have in this room related to the family you're searching, this would be a good place to start. just to see what's there. Okay, a second place to start, after you've done that in this room, the second place where you might begin to find things is in the New England Historic Genealogical Society Register. Okay, and it's referred to as NEHGS, and their regular publication is the Register. And I believe it's a quarterly publication. And they're down in Boston, down on Newbury Street. They have an outstanding library. They put on outstanding educational programs, both in New England, around the country, and around the world. They lead tours to Salt Lake City. They regularly do tours in England and Ireland and I presume other places as well. But the New England Historic Genealogical Society is a great resource library, and if you need an excuse to go to Boston, it's worth going. But their publication, if you want to be a member, an individual membership is something like $75. But if you are a member, you will get a quarterly publication called The Register. Yeah, these are bound volumes by year, and these are reports and articles written by other genealogists who have researched specific lines. So your family may be in here somewhere, okay? And the way that you find out whether they are or not is on this side there are some indexes. The earlier indexes are in red like most of the books. The later indexes are in blue. Now, of course, you have to be very careful because lots of people have the same name. So, yeah, this is why the fundamentals of genealogy really come in. You have to know who you're looking for. You probably have to know where they live already, and maybe know a little bit about them before you decide that some entry in there refers to your family. Okay, big caution because there are tons of people with the same name. We all like to think that we're unique. I know that there are 4 or 5 John Hendersons in Maine alone. When I was down in Massachusetts, there were 3 of us within a 10-mile radius. And as I did my research, I mean, my great-grandfather was Jeremiah Murphy, and at the time that he was living here, there were like 5 or 6 other Jeremiah Murphys in the area as well. So, and I had some clues about mine. Mine I knew ran a fish shop. I knew that he was in the Auburn Murphys. He wasn't in Lewiston like most of the rest of them. And so it wasn't hard to find him and his siblings. Because I had run into somebody who, just an old guy who knew him, and said, "Oh yes, they were the only Auburn Murphys." So it wasn't difficult for me to track mine. But that's the sort of information you need as you go into these books, one step at a time. Don't get ahead of yourself and skip a generation and think that you might be finding somebody, because it's too easy to make mistakes that way. Okay, but the Register is a very cool resource in that, particularly the farther back you go, as you've established a good basic research, it's a good place to go looking to see what somebody else may have already done on your particular line.
I think she had a question, John.
Question.
Yes, I just was questioning, you said about where they lived, the area. Is that just as important as dates of birth and place of birth?
It helps in terms of using the resource.
Right, because I've never used them. I don't see what's in there. And you emphasized that area was important.
If you have an idea. I mean, if you're shooting in the dark and you're trying to develop prospects, I mean, it's useful for that as well. You can see what families are laid out, and maybe the person you're looking for is part of a family that was done, and maybe they're not mentioned specifically, but if you find, let's say you're looking for a Murphy family or you know, a Littlefield family or something like that, and you go, you know, you're at a wall where you're trying to figure out where they were before, you can get some ideas on where to start looking from articles that have already been written on somebody of that family name. Because sometimes your relative or the branch of the family that you're looking at might not be mentioned, but somebody related to them, you know, might have been written up already.
So if you know you're looking in the New Auburn area, and you see the right name, but not the right last name, but not the right individual name, that still might give you a clue of where to keep looking.
You know, and just as a, you know, as a broad, very broad example, the Little family here in Auburn, you know, their home base was Newburyport. So, you know, if you were tracing the Littles of Auburn, Maine, you might not find them immediately, but you might find all kinds of stuff written up in the register on the Littles of Newburyport, and eventually you might be able to connect the two lines. Okay, let's see. Let's go over to this case. So, families already written up by somebody else are in this case. New England Historic Genealogical Society registers are in this case. And back in the corner here. If y'all can gather forward and come around the table. There's some more generalized resources on the front side of this case. And if you've got an old family, there's a book called The Genealogical Dictionary of Maine and New Hampshire. And it's written by somebody named Noyes, and it's an old book. It was published, 1928, 1939, thereabouts. So, you know, those were folks back then looking up early Maine and New Hampshire families. So you may find a reference to either your direct family line or perhaps somebody related to them here.
Does it kind of, I think it ends around 1700, is that correct?
That I don't know, but that,
It's the really early.
yeah, it's the earliest settlers. Yeah. What else do we have here? I haven't used it much because my families are relatively young, but there's this public periodical called Sprague's Journal. And in Maine, this journal was published for some time and gives sketches of individuals as well. And, you know, other Maine type stories where, if not somebody in your family is mentioned, the articles may discuss a career like lumbering or something like that, or a regional story in here that would shed some light on your, you know, somebody in your family.
Oops, I'm sorry.
There are also some collections here. If you happen to strike into somebody who was somebody, there are some collections of biographies that are sometimes useful. Or if you're just collecting some contextual information to learn more about the times in which they lived, these are exceptionally useful. And what they are, this particular one is the American Series of Popular Biographies. And at the time they did a bunch of, it's a state-by-state series, so if you go to Massachusetts, there'll be a book similar to this as well with the names and biographies of some of the the more well-known people of the time. And so they sometimes give photographs, show photographs of the individual, but they lay out in fairly detailed fashion who their ancestors were. And then they talk about what their particular achievements in the world are. So these are useful. There are 3 of them here. This is the biggest one. And there's Representative Men of Maine, and it's a similar type of book. They give have a plate picture showing the individual, and then they give a 1-page or maybe 2-page biography on them. Again, often talking about who their ancestors were in some detail, which is neat. When I was researching the Irish community in this area, one of the individuals that was mentioned a couple of times early on in my research was a guy named Daniel McGillicuddy. And these books were helpful in providing more detailed information on who he was. And his father built 2 buildings that are still standing over on Lisbon Street, the first McGillicuddy block and the second McGillicuddy block. But his biography laid out that he was a 3-time mayor of Lewiston, and also went on to be a congressman for the state of Maine, and that's why he was included in the work, is that he was somebody of some significance. And for the Irish community in this area, he and his family were the early top of the heap in their ethnic community. His uncle was also a very prominent person in the development of the Lewiston Catholic community.
I just wanted to say that in my research, I have gone back to the early Auburn, but I found a lot of information in the Androscoggin history.
History of Androscoggin County. That's next on the list. Yep.
Okay.
Yep.
Because there's a tremendous amount of family names and that sort of thing.
Yep. Yep. We'll talk about that in just a second. Thank you for bringing that up. Well, what else do we have here? Maine families in 1790. Again, if you're doing early research, there's a series down here with that. So that's the sort of thing that you find on this bookcase. And I'm going to do up a map that I'll have on the desk over here for you when you come in on Monday night. I'm here on Mondays 5 to 7.
But not this Monday.
It's okay. Yep.
I get the night off, Oscar. All right.
It's the generic President's Day.
That's right. They won't let me do historical research on President's Day.
Not here.
Online.
Okay, let's see. Vital records, compilations. What do we have? Oh yes, down here on this case with the NEHGS register are some compilations of vital records for genealogists. Of course, this is paper gold. Tory's New England marriages. So this is prior to 1700, so that's really early, and Bev may talk about some of that later. But there are also some other specialized books. Here's Death Notices from Free Will Baptist Publications, 1811 to 1851 by David C. Young. Does anybody know that guy?
No.
That name sounds familiar. Yeah, David's our president.
And my husband.
Marriage notices from the Maine Farmer, 1833 to 1852.
And when you say Maine, you mean the whole state of Maine?
Yes.
The Maine Farmer was the name of a newspaper that is still in existence. Not as the Maine Farmer, it is now more popularly known as the Portland Press Herald.
You get that. Okay.
And guess what? I was involved in that book.
Yeah, so, as you're probably aware, Maine didn't require the collection at the state level of vital records until 1892. So, once you get past, going backwards, get past 1892, you have to start being, these sorts of books come in really handy, as well as original
Yeah,
records.
they're an index, they list what paper and where that paper can be found.
See, I have come in, but only worked on the city directories. I have never looked around them. It's very
Yeah.
helpful, very helpful.
Yeah, we went through a lot of newspapers and copied down. Death notices were more common, marriage notices were less common, birth notices were rare.
Yeah, another genealogical dictionary here. This is the Genealogical Dictionary of New England, and it's a 4-volume series. So if you've got a family that that did move around or spread around, or if you need to extend the breadth of your search for a particular target, then this could come in handy as well. Okay, on the back side of this case is the best book on this side of the case, in my opinion, is indeed a history of Androscoggin County. Okay, it was written and published in the early 1890s. So you don't have a lot of the more recent stuff, but they've got some really neat details on Lewis and Auburn and the surrounding towns back to 1854, when the county was formed. Okay, and to give you an idea, some of the index or the table of contents, there's a section in here on military affairs, I think it's called, where they list out by unit the people from Androscoggin County who were in the Union Army in the Civil War. Of course, in 1890, this was still relatively fresh knowledge. But by town, it goes by towns and lots of different.
That makes it good too, if you know, going by the towns and you're trying to do surrounding